Right. So I'm Mark Beneteau with the Circling Guide, and I have with me on the call Jason Diggs. Jason Diggs is a person that anyone who's connected to circling and movement knows. And I'm going to read your bio, Jason, just to kick us off because I like it a lot. And this is on the Art International website. Art Authentic Relating Training is Jason's and Riel's business at authenticrelatingtraining.com. And it says, Jason is a modern Renaissance man, equal parts artist, philosopher, teacher, and video producer. From 2003 to 2012, he worked for Ken Wilber and other clients to create thousands of hours of educational media on the topics of transpersonal psychology. You know, I didn't know that about you, Jason. That's very cool. Spirituality, productivity, and personal growth. For the past 4 years, he's been a trainer and facilitator for groups within the authentic relating and circling realm, and is obsessed with how humans can live and relate optimally. And I just want to say also, so Jason has a podcast of his own. It's called the Authentic Life Podcast, and I've listened to most of it. How many episodes?
Authentic Life, actually.
This Authentic Life. How many episodes do you have?
I have 14 episodes that I've released. And I, believe it or not, I have like 8 episodes sitting on my hard drive that I haven't edited or released yet, but that's coming.
I see. Okay, good. Well, I look forward to listening to the unreleased episodes because I'm tracking what you're doing. It's very exciting. So,
cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So basically, I think you wanted to do kind of a short and sweet interview, Jason, and I'm cool with that. Just as long as we don't really lose the depth of the sense of you, but I'm looking for, to hear more where you've been and where you're going, essentially.
Okay. Yeah, I'm delighted to be here, Mark. I've been following a lot of your writing and posting about this movement. And, many years ago when I started, it really became apparent to me that this was spreading faster than anyone could track. We were training leaders in Boulder, and we've, now trained hundreds of circling facilitators through T3, Train the Trainer program. But those people had gone out and started teaching other people. And, there's the people we know about, like Sarah Ness and the leaders of Circling Europe, who are very prominent and kind of have a voice in the industry. And then there's actually dozens and dozens of other people who are out there leading game nights, leading events, implementing this with their family and friends and colleagues. And so the term authentic relating is actually spreading quite quickly. And like I can go to the other side of the world in Bali, in Asia, and people are like, oh, you do authentic relating? I've heard of that.
Cool. That's very exciting. Listen, not to break your flow, but just had an immediate burning curiosity, which I'm sure many of our listeners are as well, is what's happening with Boulder Integral T3? There's one starting up, and I think is Decker doing it?
That's correct. Yeah, Decker is teaching along with Josh Levin. We start in 2 days.
Are you teaching?
Yeah, I'm one of the course leaders. Yep.
Okay, good.
So yeah, I'm actually coming to the end of a season. This is kind of starting the story in the middle, but I'm coming into the end of the season of working for Integral Center, working for Robert McNaughton and Decker, and have started my own project, Authentic Relating Training, with Riel last summer. So I've been working on my own project for about 8 months now, and I'm coming to the end of working for Robert and Decker, who are my teachers. And it's been such a beautiful use of this practice to literally start a business that is in competition with my employer, with my teachers, and be able to work on like, how can we synergize? How can what I'm doing complement what you're doing? How can what I'm doing not step on your toes? And in that sense, it can be like a partner dance. And I think that's, the deeper application of authentic relating is that all of our interactions can be kind of like a co-creation or a collaboration, or and maybe even if we're in competition with each other, if we both have circling businesses or both have businesses in this realm, we can be in cooperation, which is like really making the competition aspect explicit and talking about it, and instead of kind of saying one thing behind each other's backs and being friendly to each other in person. Well, authentic relating is about making it all explicit, bringing it all into the conversation. And so I've been able to do that with Robert and Decker. Mm-hmm.
Oh, but congratulations! Looks you guys are inventing a sort of a new business modality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's just backtrack a second and just, why don't you tell us your circling story from the beginning?
Sure. Well, yeah. I came into circling and authentic relating through integral theory. So myself and Robert McNaughton both worked for Ken Wilber. And so I knew him as a friend and as a colleague. And, he went out to California and kind of got the transmission from the teachers out there. Authentic relating really started about 15 years ago in the Bay with a group of teachers. And Robert got that source knowledge and brought it back to Boulder. And there was this thing called the Red Pill here in Boulder, where all the California teachers came out here and started to teach us. And then Robert started the
That was a men's weekend, right? The Red Pill?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And so when Robert started the Integral Center, I was actually there. He and I were friends and colleagues, and I was running my video business from the same building that he took over. And he twisted my arm. He got me into T3 through some very friendly coercion, which Robert is great at. And it changed my life forever, because I had been a philosopher, someone who really wanted to help the planet, help the world through, transpersonal psychology and these high-minded ideas. And I wasn't seeing the traction that I wanted to in my own, giving my own gift to the world. And authentic relating, the primary thing it did for me right off the bat is it gave me tangible feedback about how I was impacting others, and therefore how I was doing on my mission and desire to make the world a better place, right? I was a very optimistic person and wanted to make the world a better place. That was always part of myself, but I didn't actually have the feedback loop to know whether or not I was doing that until I started authentic relating. And I think that's for new practitioners, that is one of the most important things, is just start asking people how you're being received. Because if you demonstrate that openness, people will start to tell you, and you'll start to grow really fast.
Wow, powerful. That's words to the wise there, my friend. I'm taking that in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right, so again, I just have a lot of curiosity about this. You were essentially producing videos on transpersonal psychology for Ken Wilber. What exactly were you covering? And
oh yeah, well, back in the day, we had all these courses, integral psychology, integral philosophy, integral ecology, integral Buddhism, integral Christianity. And so we would film all these different courses and then edit that material and put it up on the website and create DVDs and things like that. So we were creating a lot of media.
And you did this for a decade, for real?
Well, I was working directly for Ken Wilber for 5 years, and then I started my own video production business. And for my own video production business, about half or a third of my clients were teachers and change agents in that particular
Interesting.
place.
Okay, good.
But,
so you have a lot of connections in the transformational leadership space as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So, this does bring up something else. It's like the authentic relating and circling just sort of took over the integral movement after Ken Wilber withdrew or retired from the Integral Center. And this is another thing that absolutely fascinates me. Do you have anything? Can you speak to that? I mean, I assume this was sort of Robert's influence.
Well, I think it's the influence of the practice itself. I think it's the most effective application of integral theory out there. There's this idea that it's called idea virus from Seth Godin, an idea whose time has come, or an idea that's infectious actually just spreads in the culture. And integral theory is a very beautiful, sophisticated lens through which to view human development and human systems and society. but it's really best suited to people who are academics and philosophers and psychologists, whereas authentic relating actually applies to every person on the planet. And I think that's one of the reasons it's kind of has legs. I mean, I personally believe that 10 years from now, we're going to have emotional education in our middle schools, right? And I think authentic relating, as we know it, has a chance to be that curriculum. But I think it's going to happen either way. And I think it's up to us to be a part of that movement, because it's already well in motion in our society. If you look at a lot of the trends out there. And I just think we have the most potent, sophisticated, and well-formulated version of this emotional education curriculum. And so I think we're well established to actually have it go into culture more and more.
Well, in terms of bringing AR into public schools, I was going to say from your lips to God's ears. Some few people are doing that already. Isn't Amelia doing that? Amelia Broughton?
No, she's not directly involved in that, but there is a high school and middle school in Sandpoint, Idaho, that does have authentic relating classes that every single student has the opportunity to take, which is the first big project. But they're a very small town in Idaho. It's a town of 8,000 people where they can kind of get around the red tape. So, we have a long way to go as a movement to really validate all of our claims. Like I can give an anecdotal like testimonial, like, oh, I trained someone and she said that her relationship with her daughter radically changed. And the Monday morning after my course was the best morning she had ever had with her daughter, getting her off to school, because she actually learned to listen and get her daughter's world instead of, just trying to control her. And we have hundreds and maybe even thousands of anecdotal pieces of evidence that this is impactful for people's lives, but we have yet to prove it. It's up to us as a movement to get our shit together, so to speak, so that we can actually impact society, right? Because right now where we're at is really just 10,000 early adopters, which is a very small percentage of the population.
Yeah, I feel a lot of excitement hearing you talk, Dazen, and a couple of things. You're really taking sort of a visionary leadership here, from what I can see, and I sort of like the fact that you are really seeing this as a global movement that is basically taking over. It's like sort of the not manifest destiny, but that's a different context. But you understand my meaning, right? It's inevitable, right?
Yep. I am an American.
Say again.
I'm an American. And, it was interesting going to Bali and training people in authentic relating, because at the same time I was training them in this practice, they were training me in how to be a world citizen.
Right.
Which is not something I ever received, just visiting Europe for 2 weeks or visiting, Australia or Costa Rica during my lifetime didn't actually make me a world citizen. It just made me someone who was, had traveled. But as soon as I was out of the country for 2 months and became objective to my Americanism, I could begin to own that and be like, oh, wow, I'm ambitious to a fault, and there's positive parts about that, and there's externalities, there's negative parts of that, and I need to actually mitigate those things. And this is what I mean by, I think authentic relating is one of the most powerful feedback loops we have for growth. Because when we start to be objective to how we're being perceived by others and the impact we're having on others, we can not necessarily change who we are, but we can wake up to it, and we can mitigate that through, it's like, oh, I need to check in before I go and take over someone's territory, because Americans are really good at that, right? We're really good at pushing and being ambitious and expanding things and growing things.
Yeah, I like that as sort of the statement that authentic relating is just basically inquiring or being curious how we occur to people. It's a very concise articulation. I love that. What I say often is AR is expressing truth with care or care with truth.
Hmm.
So that the element of care also, I think, is very present. Appreciative inquiry, it might be called.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very true. I love that, Mark. And I think that's a beautiful way to put it. Recently, I've been thinking a little bit about how these two values of authenticity and belonging, they're kind of in a paradoxical relationship. It's hardwired into us, into our neurobiology for hundreds of thousands of years, that belonging to the tribe is really, really important. And we live in a world that's very fragmented. I think a recent study came out that 1 in 4 Americans said they don't have a friend that they could confide in. They don't have a friend that's close enough that they could truly confide in them. That's just stunning, right? So we live in a culture that's very fragmented, and who's our tribe? It used to be 50 years ago, it used to be our church, but that's all broken down now. And how do we find our tribe, and how do we get our need for belonging met? Like we can't transcend our need for belonging. I don't care how much meditation or how spiritual or how enlightened you are.
Right.
We all need that. But our desire for authenticity and expressing our truth actually competes with that need for a belonging sometimes. Because in order to truly speak what's on our mind, it's not necessarily true, but it feels threatening to our belonging. It feels like we might be thrown out of the tribe if we step too far out of line.
Yeah, I get it. Absolutely. And I just want to add to that, it's just that belonging is really deeply embedded into the context of being human, but it's really not anything that we talk about for the most part with predictable consequences, right? We're unconscious. And this is what I see as the part of the power of the AR movement, is it really surfaces what is fundamentally our deepest motivation as human beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I like how you frame things. When's your book coming out?
Let's just say 2 years from now.
2 years from now. Okay, got it.
No, I'm much more of a video producer, and my passion is creating media, and so I've been doing some online video blogging in the last year, and creating the podcast that I did, and I'm going to be stepping it up quite a bit, and you'll see a lot more media from me.
Okay, I look forward to that. I look very much forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And just a little bit to give you a little bit of a positive kick in the pants. This podcast is getting posted this very day, Jason. Just saying. No.
See, you're posting it same day. Oh my God! I literally have podcasts that I recorded 3 months ago that I have to publish. But that will change. That will change.
Okay, good.
Some little friendly co-opetition there between us.
Exactly. Cool. All right. So thanks for that sort of like very brief history background. I'm sure there's so much more, but I'm getting the essence, and it's great. Tell me about ART, Authentic Relating Training International, and tell me about the Bali project. Tell me also about the North Africa project. Did that work out? Did it complete?
Mm-hmm. That particular one did not, but our international, so Ryle and I started our own company last summer, actually last May, and we've been doing courses together quite a bit. New York, Chicago, he just finished Seattle. We've done Sydney, Australia, and Bali a couple times, and we're really looking to grow this, and we have a version of the Authentic curriculum that we believe is very potent, and really in just a matter of 2 days time or 3 days time, we can train people in all of the top 10 distinctions and core ways of being in the world that people can begin to practice all of these things on Monday. And so we're taking the principles from circling, and we're not necessarily making circling a thing or a practice. I know that's a lot of people's passion. And what we've looked at specifically is, not everyone in our society wants to sit in a circle for an hour. They may want to have skills and tools that within a short amount of time, they can just be practicing in their romantic relationship, in their work relationship. And so that's the training that we're doing. You know, we're still doing present moment awareness practice. We're still doing noticing. We're still breaking up into small groups and doing things that look like circling in some ways, but we're not making it into a thing. And we're finding that these ways of being can be picked up very quickly. Actually, I believe we're starting with a different assumption than a lot of the other leaders in this industry. We're starting with the assumption that these ways of being are natural and that they can immediately be used. So, you know, you don't need a year-long training in circling to really be a practitioner. All you need is like a very few basic skills. And I think that's because this is an idea whose time has come. It's people see this, they feel it, and they're like, what is this thing? Like, it just feels right. I don't even know exactly why it feels so potent, but I suddenly have the ability to speak my mind, be myself, and be in connection and move towards my desires, all in the same time frame. And I think you know, we have lived in the age of materialism for many, many years, and we're actually transitioning into an age of authenticity and transparency, where people want their lives to be integrated. They don't want to be a different person at work than they are at home. They really want to have the tools to be themselves everywhere.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't know this. I didn't realize that you were developing you're developing your own AR curriculum, that you were teaching that you're teaching in really short segments as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is wonderful. I'm totally supportive of that, and I think this is definitely the direction that we need to go in. And it reminds me a little bit of sort of a concept that I've invented called a guerrilla circling.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. It's like circling people invisibly without
Mm-hmm.
their knowledge. Is that do you feel any kind of resonance with that idea?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, that's just implementing the tools of authentic relating into our lives, right?
Right.
Because if we take a little bit of a different attitude, a little bit of different inner posture, and try to get someone's world, we can suddenly learn so much about that being and what their motivation is, and who they are in the world, and how they organize life. And we can learn for ourselves, like, oh, it's possible for a human being to organize life in this way. That's so different than me, right? So just that one inner posture of getting someone's world can make all of the difference, because then we're creating a field of listening where that person actually gets to be more themselves, right? And the benefit is so big, because what we didn't do is just think of every counterpoint in our mind based on what they were saying. And so instead of creating a competition or a conflict, or creating difference, we're actually creating unity, and we're creating exploration and mystery and curiosity as a culture around us.
It's beautiful. Once again, it's very well articulated, Jason. You have a gift of gab.
Honestly, it really comes alive when I'm with another person and having a dialogue. These are not things that I've necessarily said before. It's really inspired by you and your questions, and obviously my passion for this work as well.
Cool. Well, I definitely feel very, very excited talking to you. This is very cool. All right. We're getting close to wrapping up here. I'm thinking you wanted a brief, and I'm cool with that. I do have. I'm wondering, in terms of your events in Australia and Bali, who's well, I guess two questions. First of all, who's producing that for you? Who are your partners over there? Are you connected to the Tribe Group? The interview I did last week with Damien Kohler and.
Yeah, Kali produced the first course in Sydney for us back in November, and I know those guys. Over the years, there's been so many people who have come through Boulder. So there was 3 guys in particular who moved to Boulder from Australia for 6 months. Jesse Riley, John Bruce, and Daniel Burr. And so those guys are our main partners out in Bali and Australia right now.
And they're in Sydney?
Daniel's been based in Bali for the last 4 years, I believe, and Jesse and John are in Brisbane. So there's a Brisbane course April 7th and 8th.
Okay, I didn't realize there were actually two separate AR movements in Australia, it seems.
Oh, there's
at
quite
least.
a few. You know, that's
Really?
the thing. This work is spreading so fast that there's quite a bit more out there than any one person can track. You know, T3 in Boulder alone has trained close to 300 students in the last 5 years, right?
Okay.
That's not counting what the other organizations, you know, Sarah Ness alone has trained hundreds of people as
At least
facilitators.
many hundreds. She does the ALFTs quite frequently and all over the place. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I did 3 of those with her in Boulder as her co-lead because I really wanted to bring that back to my community after going to Austin and experiencing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay, just another question that came up just a minute ago. You talked about 10,000 early adopters. That number 10,000, you know, did someone pull it out of a hat, or is
Yes.
there any reality to it? Someone pulled it out of a
Yes,
hat.
I pulled it out of my magic hat attached to a fuzzy white rabbit. That's just what I estimate. You know, I recently talked to one of the circling leaders from way back in the day, 15 years ago. Her name is Malika. In San Francisco, in the Bay, you know, there was a group of people innovating this and doing this work 15, 16 years ago. And so if I just extrapolate that to, okay, well, then 9 years ago, Boulder kind of became the second hub of this work, right? And then you know, it went to Europe, and then John and Sean picked it up. And, you know, maybe 6 years ago, Amsterdam became a hub of this work. And, you know, 6 years ago, Sarah Ness made Austin a hub for this. So I think of it as 4 main hubs that are...
Which would be, again, circling Europe, you know, Sarah's Austin work, Boulder, and the Bay Area?
Yes.
All right, got it.
Yep. And then, you know, just doing some math on the back of a napkin, I'm just like, okay, well, we must have had 10,000 people come through courses from these 4 places. You know, and other courses have been done all over. You know, if I list the number of cities, I'm not even talking about the number of places that have a game night or a circling place, right?
Well, why would you not include them? Those should be included.
Well, I'm just talking about the cities that have had like a full 2 or 3 day course immersion.
Okay.
You know,
Got it.
I think there's 10,000 people who have been through a course.
Okay. Nice.
In the last 15 years. And so probably if you're just talking about people who have heard of circling or authentic relating and experienced a 2-hour event, who knows? We might be 20,000. Yeah, and I think New York City is worth mentioning too, because that's had a long-standing community with Amy Silverman for quite some time too. So that might be the 5th hub.
Right.
And
yeah, I mean, I would say that Amy's group is probably the oldest actual form, you know, AR community, you know, other than Sarah, other than Austin, who actually does AR more than circling, shall we say?
Yep. Yeah. So if I think about this, I'm just like, okay, well, movements kind of follow this curve of early adopters, innovators, you know, which is roughly 3% of the market, and then we hit the early majority. Which is roughly like 24% of the market. And that's where we are. We're just bridging that gap as a movement. Okay. And yeah, and I, you know, I think me and Sarah have been 2 of the people in this movement that have traveled around the most and seen the most communities and been the most places. And so I'm hearing left and right about things. You know, for instance, I was in a cafe in Bali, in Asia, and I meet this woman. And, you know, she's from Massachusetts, and then she starts teaching me about how she's doing this end-of-life curriculum with this Zen teacher, and this Zen teacher is bringing in authentic relating as part of the curriculum. And I'm like, who is this person? And it turns out he was just someone who's picked this work up and just made it his own and run with it.
No, any connection to the Monastic Academy in Vermont?
I don't think that's where he picked it up. No, but I do know some of those guys. I had some of them on my podcast, Peter Park, and yeah.
Yeah, I know Peter. Cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, fascinating. Let me ask you one last thing, Jason. You were talking about earlier about your relationships with your mentors as you're about to go and launch another company, which could potentially be seen in competition. And from my end, competition is not really an accurate. It's not like we're selling dish soap. We're basically, there's 8 billion people on this earth who stand to have their lives transformed by this. So I personally can't really see it like that. But I do want to say that there seems to be a tension in the global circling movement between people who really hold, really believe in the value of lineage, and that people really ought to be accredited and approved and go through the training of the different lineages, of which there are 3, as you know.
Yep.
Versus people who think that just like this all free for all, and we're going to go out there and hit the streets and start leading and let the chips fall where they may. And I'm sort of in the latter camp. And of course we can have the tension is good by definition within our world. But speak to me about your take on that. Where do you see?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I'm someone who has followed a lineage. I not only started with the Integral Center, taking T3 and, becoming an assistant course leader, which is a glorified volunteer, and, dedicating weekends upon weekends of time to learning this practice. But I was also the person who traveled down to Austin and took the ALFT with a teacher who was, 16 years younger than me, and learned from Sarah. And then I went to New York City and took the first SAS in America, and, called John and Sean, teachers and highly influenced me as well. And then also started to synthesize my own formulation of this. And I ended up staying with the Integral Center, even though I had different philosophical tensions or wasn't fully satisfied always there. Like I stayed in and I became a course leader, and I've been working with them closely for the past 3 years. And so I really value lineage. I think there's a big difference between someone who can say, okay, let's do a game, let's do the noticing practice, and let's do the curiosity game, and someone who can transmit this work. Yeah. So the transmission to me is akin to the way a Buddhist teacher transmits that lineage. So for me, the transmission is, can you create a field of awareness, a field of, I call it a field of listening, because to me, authentic relating primarily starts with yin. It starts with, how can I receive a person in their essence? How can I receive, like, knowing that actually communication is not the content of the words that are coming out of this person's mouth. Communication is the energetic exchange, but mind to mind, heart to heart, soul to soul that's happening. And if I can increase my field, my energetic field, I can actually start to pick up on a lot more information. And so as a teacher, it's my responsibility to create that field, because so many of the people who are being introduced to this work haven't ever experienced that before. And so that's on the one side of the street. And on the other side of the street, I actually fall much more with you.
It's a powerful distinction, Jason, a powerful articulation. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I haven't actually heard that articulated with such clarity before.
Oh, wow.
Just let me tell you what I heard, because I think it's really so important. There's
Awesome.
a difference between hitting the streets and leading AR, which probably most of us can do. I mean, I do. I don't have any great claims to brilliant leadership. I could say I'm an amateur, but I'm a successful amateur, right? There's a difference between doing that versus really transmitting a lineage, which requires a significant integration of the process, the material, which is not going to happen in a weekend.
Yep.
Right. And I appreciate you for really, putting in the legwork and training with all these people to really get that level of consciousness, I think.
Yep. Yeah. And having said all that, I very much encourage people to hit the streets. And we're all teachers of this work because we are all communicators. We all have, loved ones and, important missions in this world that can be enhanced through conscious communication. And so I want people to spread this as fast as possible to as many people as possible. And, if you want to start a local circling group or you want to teach AR or you want to lead a game night, like I'm on the side of the street of like, go and do it. Like, can I help you? And, here's what Art International is doing. We're looking at what is authentic relating look like as a professional training with a lot of rigor and a lot of, follow-up material. When someone takes one of our courses, they get an email on Monday that's like, these are the 10 ways you can apply this to your life. And these are the 10 tools that we taught you. And once you implement these, like integrate these into your lives, it will transform every relationship you have. If you wanted to, if you let it.
Sweet. And I'll just riff off of that and say, like, from my perspective, it's like we all have relationships, and to have the information that we have and to not transmit it would be profoundly irresponsible. So that's so I take it.
Yeah.
But I totally understand the value of the lineage, and you've expressed it very, very clearly. I haven't really done any formal training, but I'm promising John and Sean this. My first buck is going to go to the Amsterdam SAS. I want to do it in Amsterdam rather than New York. I just think the Europeans are more advanced than we are, rightly or wrongly.
Yeah. Culturally, that is true in many ways. And yeah, I want to just give you a reflection and an acknowledgement, because I think we all have a different reputation in this industry, and you kind of have this reputation as like the hack that's just willing to like put it out there in a way that's unpolished.
Cowboy circling, they call it.
Cowboy circling, yeah, and I love it. I love that you're out there doing this and spreading it, and I encourage you to do more. And if I can help you in any way, let me know. And there's also kind of a call that I want to give to the listeners of at Art International. Like, we need help. We need help to spread this work. We want to create a small army of facilitators who are bringing this work all over the world in the next year to 2 years. And so, like, if you want to produce a training in your hometown and you want to partner with us, like, we're down to do that and have that conversation. We're doing it with people all over. Like, I have Maui in the works. I have Missoula, Montana in the works, and a number of other places, Santa Fe, that we're gonna be looking at spreading this as quick as possible. And in fact, like, I'm in this humongous transition in my own life where I'm putting my stuff in storage and moving away from Boulder so I can be on the road.
Oh, really? Like,
yeah,
full-time traveling AR leader.
Pretty much.
Oh,
I'll be on the road, 75% of the time, teaching and leading wherever I'm called.
That's exciting. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, listen, I'll do my best to produce an event for you in Philadelphia, and we'll see if we can get DC in on it as well. or possibly two events. Okay, I think that would be
Yeah,
super
let's
fun.
do it.
Have you
That's
have you
so
have you
great.
have you done in New York yet? New York City?
Yeah, we have done New York.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and
All right.
would love to come back. So.
Let's end it there. Do you have anything final that you want to say to listeners here? Upcoming programs, anything specific?
I think I said it. I just want to end by thanking you for doing the work that you're doing, and it felt really good to kind of have this high energy dialogue with you and laughed a little bit, and I very much believe that your field of listening helps me bring my genius forth. Right? And there's something that's core to authentic relating in that we can all be that field of listening for another person at any time that we choose. The only thing that's stopping us is that choice to do it differently.
Well, I'm all tingly now. Thanks. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Mark.
So how did that go for you?
Oh, it was fun. Yeah, it usually takes me a couple of minutes to get going, and then there's like a flow or an energy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I notice when I'm practicing, whether that's circling or I'm in a room with people and leading, my verbal pacing is a little bit slower. And then whenever I'm doing something on the internet or something media related, like my energy gets charged and I speed up quite a bit. And I think that's just adapting to the fact that people have really short attention spans because of the way our media has saturated our culture. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been accused of being speedy, and people have given me feedback in my groups that they kind of want to slow down a little bit and sort of drop into presence more. And I get it. I think that's part of the transmission too, right? That we were already talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, at the same time, on a basically on a media project, we have a result that's going to get produced here. Like I feel kind of this internal pressure to let's get the content and let's get it quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that land on you? Did you feel like I was sort of pushing you?
No, I felt very much synergistic with you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a time and a place to slow down in presence. And that's the one part of my training that we didn't discuss, is that I spent 7 years in the Diamond approach, and
right.
Yeah, which is my transpersonal psychology training. It's one of the things that I'm primarily integrating with authentic relating.
Nice.
And the fields of presence that can be created through just bringing online our somatic awareness of feeling our arms and legs while we're talking, feeling our arms and legs while we're listening to other people. I think it naturally slows us down and brings us into presence. It's like a very simple directive for that. There's a time and a place for that, and then there's a time and a place to be speedy. And I just like and geeking out with you. That was fun.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the validation of there being a time and place to be speedy, because but that's okay. Super cool. You haven't talked much about Guy Senstock. I believe Guy is also very impacted by Diamond Approach.
Yeah. Guy and I have had a conversation or two over the years, but he hasn't necessarily been one of my teachers. Like I think I've been in 2 circles with him.
Okay.
In the last 5 years.
Okay. All right.
But I would love to.
I'm kind of wanting you and him to sync up about this, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be interesting. Yeah, he leads in Asheville, which I'm probably going to be next month. I hope to see him.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All
right. I my vote would be to put the debrief on the podcast. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's do it.